Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a massive stack of information surrounding the upcoming Midnight update, and we're focusing specifically on the complete overhaul of the 6 tank specializations.
Yeah, we've been tracking this one really closely. The sources show an incredible amount of class pruning and just total redesign. The main goal here seems to be simplification.
Right, cutting down on button bloat, lowering the skill floor.
Exactly. But as we're about to get into, you'll see that simpler doesn't always mean better. And it definitely doesn't always mean more fun, especially for players who really enjoyed the complexity of their current tank. So our mission for you is simple. We're giving you the shortcut to understanding the biggest winners and losers here. If you're a veteran looking to main a tank in Midnight, or, maybe you're a new player just trying to figure out what each spec even does, we've got you covered. We've pulled out the essential nuggets, the major losses, the new Apex talents, and our final verdict on how they'll feel to play.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to begin at the bottom, where there's one spec in what you could only call serious identity crisis territory, and that, unfortunately, is Protection Paladin.
Yeah, it's a rough spot. To set the scene for anyone new, Prot Paladin was traditionally the tank of high-skill expression. Its defense was built like a Swiss watch.
It wasn't just about pressing one big button.
Not at all. It was all about layering numerous defensive cooldowns like Ardent Defender, Guardian of Ancient Kings, and making sure you had 100% spell block uptime. The skill was in the constant, perfect management of all those tools, and here's where the redesign shock hits hardest.
That entire core identity has been, well, it's been dismantled. The whole concept of rolling cooldowns is just gone, completely gone. The most critical loss is the removal of those core cooldown reduction mechanics. Talents like Righteous Protector, which was central to the whole rotation, are just gone.
And that was the talent that let you spend Holy Power to get your big defenses back faster, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
It let you keep your Iron Wall, Guardian of Ancient Kings, up for way longer. Without it, you just can't sustain high defensive uptime anymore. It's impossible.
They also lost Bastion of Light, and the mechanics for that 100% spell block are gone too.
Yeah.
These were the tools players used to actively mitigate damage, and now there are just huge gaps.
And on top of that, the clunky issue remains. You're still heavily reliant on standing in your consecration just for baseline damage reduction.
Which feels so outdated.
It feels ancient. In a world where tanks are constantly moving, having to drop a little circle on the ground and stay in it for your basic mitigation is just incredibly restrictive.
Okay, but let's talk new stuff. Their Apex talent, Glory of the Vanguard, it does make the rotation smoother. Judgment procs Vanguard gives you Holy Power, buffs Shield of the Righteous.
Right, the buttons you press feel better, but does it matter if you're dead?
That is the question.
That's exactly it. A smooth rotation is a small comfort. The big concern is that even with a pity buff, like giving Guardian of Ancient Kings 2 charges, you're still spending more than half your time with no major defensive cooldown active.
So if the old Paladin was a master strategist, the new one is.
What? It's like a cannon that fires once and then just sits there completely exposed. That loss of synergy is why it's firmly in the bottom tier. Okay, so leaving that existential crisis behind, let's move to the middle ground, the mixed bag. This is where we see some specs trading that deep complexity for, say, utility or just approachability. First up, Protection Warrior. Prot Warriors, for anyone new, are your traditional masters of physical mitigation. Plate armor, shields, blocking. That's their bread and butter. Their weakness, historically, was a lack of self-sustain and group utility.
And their personal durability took some really big hits in this alpha. Anger management no longer reduces the cooldown of Shield Wall. That's a massive, massive defensive nerf.
Huge. And their main self-sustained talent, fueled by violence, had its healing percentage slashed. They also lost key talents like Unstoppable Force. And honestly, their new Apex talent, Fangs, is pretty lackluster.
It just gives passive damage buffs, right? It doesn't feel very exciting.
It feels very dull compared to the tools they lost.
So wait, if they're less durable personally, and their new Apex talent is a bit of a dud, why aren't they down there with Paladin?
That's the crucial point. Because what they lost in personal defense, they gained in an enormous package of group utility. They're shifting from being a pure mitigation tank into a utility powerhouse.
Okay, give us the highlights. What did they get?
First, Intimidating Shout is now a baseline AoE fear with no target cap. Huge. Second, Rallying Cry now gives the whole party 5% leech and a speed boost.
That's incredible utility from a tank.
Incredible. And then there's Champion Spear, which is now an AoE mass grip, plus Disrupting Shout, their AoE silence, becomes way more valuable.
And they changed Last Stand into a passive cheat death ability, which has a safety net.
Exactly, so the verdict is complicated. Your personal uptime on defensives is weaker, no doubt. But the utility you bring to the party is off the charts. You're less of an immovable object and more of a strategic force multiplier.
Next up, Vengeance Demon Hunter. This was the spec that was notorious for needing a ton of attention.
Oh, yeah. Historically, Vengeance was super complex. You had to juggle frailty stacks, pain burst stacks, and you used your big damage ability, Fell Devastation, defensively just to get more uptime on Metamorphosis.
High skill, high reward.
Absolutely. And now the goal is explicitly to lower that skill ceiling. They're removing the most, quote, unintuitive parts of min-maxing the spec.
So it was gone.
Well, the complex stacking of frailty is gone. The talent that let Fell Devastation trigger Metamorphosis is gone.
Wow.
That disconnects your damage from your defense, which really simplifies your decision-making.
And we had to pour one out for Spirit Bomb.
Yes. It was always the most confusing part of the rotation now. It's just a button you press every 21 seconds. No more complex resource decisions. It's just a cooldown.
So what's the trade-off? If they lost all that complexity, what do they get? Guaranteed Metamorphosis uptime. The new hero talents, the new Apex talent. It's all focused on one thing, making sure you're in your big defensive form almost constantly. So the Apex talent, Unfettered Rage, gives you a chance to cast Metamorphosis for free without a cooldown.
Exactly. They're trading that deep skill expression for just raw, guaranteed access to their strongest defensive. It's way easier to learn, for sure. Its viability, though, will really depend on how reliable that uptime is.
All right, continuing down this path of simplification, let's talk Brewmaster Monk.
Brewmaster. Okay, so their unique mechanic is Stagger. For new players, instead of taking a huge hit at once, the damage gets spread out over time and you purify it away.
And in recent years, they've had a lot of active cooldowns to manage on top of that.
They did, and now the design is shifting back to a much simpler time. We're talking less active button pressing and more passive, consistent damage reduction.
The pruning here is pretty severe, isn't it?
It is. Big cooldowns like Temp and Harm and Weapons of Order are just gone. Diffuse magic is now a passive part of Fortifying Brew. Even the complexity around Celestial Brew is gone. It feels less punchy, but it's more consistent.
And they removed Rising Sun Kick, which always felt a little awkward in the rotation anyway.
Right, so their passive defenses, Shuffle and Stagger, have been buffed to make them tankier just by existing. The Apex talent is mostly about rotational smoothness.
But they did get one major quality of life fix.
Yes, Jade Flash. A ranged AoE ability to tag mobs. It's something monks have wanted for years. So the verdict is pretty clear. It's just easier to play now, much easier. The complexity is gone. High-end players might miss those big damage windows, but the spec is way more consistent and accessible for everyone else.
Okay, let's pivot hard. Enough compromises. We're moving into the top tier.
Yeah.
The two specs that are clear winners with better quality of life and new engaging mechanics. Starting with Guardian Druid. They fixed the bear.
They really did. You know, historically, bear tanks were simple, maybe even a little dull. You just stacked armor with iron fur and had a giant health pool. Reliable, but not very dynamic.
But the redesign here is exactly what you want to see. It simplifies access to their core kit while deepening the skill ceiling.
The accessibility changes alone are huge. Incarnation, their biggest cooldown, is way easier to get in the talent tree. Survival Instincts, a core defensive, now has 2 charges baseline. You don't have to spend extra points for that anymore.
But the real win, the thing that makes it exciting, is the new rotational depth. Tell us about Red Moon.
Red Moon is a brand new DOT that replaces Moonfire. And you extend its duration by using Mangle. It adds this really nice, consistent focus on DOT maintenance to the rotation. It gives you something to do.
And then there's Sundering Roar.
Right. A new 1-minute cooldown that lets your Thrash stack up to 10 times, and then it explodes for a huge burst of damage. It gives the bear a real controllable damage window.
And that Apex talent, Wild Guardian, is so smart. It activates after your big cooldown ends.
That's the key. It echoes your next 2 casts of Iron Fur or Frenzied Regeneration with bonus effects. It forces you to plan ahead, 30 seconds into the future. That's a strategic layer bears just never had before.
So the verdict is a huge win. They're more dynamic, more engaging, not just a big, durable health sponge.
It's a fantastic redesign. And finally, our other big winner, Blood Death Knight. Ah, blood decay, defined by huge self-heals, but also that terrifying yo-yo health bar, spiky, and historically a very clunky rotation with awkward spenders for your bone shield charges.
So the goal here was to make them sturdier and, crucially, smoother to play.
And they do it by just removing the bloat. The list of things they cut is long and welcome. Rune Tap, gone. Clunky bone shield spenders like Tombstone and Bone Storm, gone. Even Soul Reaper, that fiddly maintenance debuff, is gone.
But getting rid of buttons doesn't stop the health bar from spiking. What makes them sturdier?
They're buffing their passive survivability, just flat out increasing their baseline armor values. The goal is to make the DK inherently tankier before you have to panic press Death Strike.
And the apex talent, Dance of Midnight, funnels everything into their coolest ability, Dancing Rune Weapon.
It's a brilliant design choice. It massively increases the uptime of Dancing Rune Weapon, gives you free abilities, huge damage reduction. It just makes that cool down your everything. You're no longer fighting complexity. You're just embracing this one big, powerful moment. So the verdict, it feels less clunky, more refined, and inherently tankier.
Yes, but, and this is a big but, we have to apply the historical DK caveat here.
Right, they often look amazing in testing.
And then get hit with heavy, heavy tuning nerfs right before launch. We've seen this movie before. The redesign is excellent structurally, but we need to be very cautious about the final numbers.
So what does this all mean for you, the player, looking toward Midnight? The big theme is undeniable, right? Simplification.
Exactly. For a new player, tanks like Brewmaster and Vengeance DH are way more approachable now. You can just pick them up and go. But the price, as we saw with Pro Paladin, is the loss of that deep, high-end skill expression. And the clear winners, Guardian Druid and Blood DK, they found the perfect balance. They didn't just remove complexity, they replaced it with new, interesting decisions.
Absolutely. So if you're thinking about a tank main, the picture is, well, it's complex. And tuning will change everything. But one thing is for sure. The era of stacking 100 niche buffs just to survive seems to be ending. Which leads us to our final thought. If the goal is to make tanks easier to play, and you remove all those complex tools they use to bridge the gaps between their big cooldowns, how much more pressure does that put on the healers to handle those sudden damage spikes?
If the tank is just exposed for, half the time, that burden has to shift somewhere. It raises a huge question about group dynamics as we head into the beta, something to definitely keep in mind.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this gave you the knowledge you need to start planning your Midnight main.